Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Isis, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. One of my viewers watched my video, Survival Tips in New York, and he wanted to know what he would need to do in order to get an apartment here in New York. And I'm going to go over what you're going to need to get an apartment here in New York. And the one thing you need to do before you even think about moving to New York or getting an apartment here in New York is making sure your finances are straight. Because when it comes down to New York City is extremely expensive. And if you don't have your money right, you're not going to be able to survive here. So you need to make sure your finances are straight. You need to have some money saved in the bank, a good amount of money in the bank, and you need to have yourself a plan to get a stable job that will help you be able to pay the bills here in New York City. And the kind of job you're going to need to stay here in New York City, you're going to need a job that pays at least anywhere from $60,000 to $75,000 a year. That's the only way you're going to be able to do things like pay your rent, pay your electric bill, and be able to eat here in New York City is to have a job that pays anywhere from $60,000 to $75,000 a year. And the reason why you're going to need that job is because the rent in New York is high. The guy who ran for mayor saying the rent is too blank high, he was absolutely right to run on that campaign because rents here in New York are astronomical in proportion to areas that are even far away from New York, not that far from New York, like New Jersey or other parts of the country. A studio apartment in Harlem goes for $1,800 a month, and a one-bedroom apartment can go from anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in an area like Harlem, which is not even prime real estate, but it's like Upper Manhattan. And even in the Bronx, you can pay anywhere from $1,600 to $1,900 for a studio in certain cases, depending on which neighborhood it's in. And a one-bedroom can go anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000, just even in parts of the Bronx that are considered really desirable. Now, the rents do go down in other neighborhoods that are poorer, like a Morrisania or a Mott Haven, even though they say Mott Haven is up and coming. These neighborhoods, yes, they might have lower rents, but these neighborhoods are filled with high crime, and they aren't very safe. So you're putting your life at risk going to go live in those neighborhoods, and you're going to be in an environment that's considered a ghetto. And those ghettos are very expensive too. So you have to understand, when it comes down to these rents, they are expensive even in the poorest areas because there is such a demand for these apartments here in New York City. Now, in order to get one of these apartments, it's a major challenge because of all of the demand from all of the thirsty people who come to New York City every year, because people come from all across the country and all across the world to want to live in New York City because they believe that this is the place where they can make their dreams come true. They believe that this is such a great city because they've been watching TV shows like Friends and Sex and the City, and they want to see all the sights and they want to live the New York lifestyle. And because of that, that's why there is such a big demand for New York City apartments in any of the 5 boroughs. There's just so much demand, and that's what makes it a major process. Now, one of the things you could do to help yourself is work with a broker like a Voro Trust. They're a good broker for apartments, but you'd have to pay a fee to that kind of broker. But those type of agents, they can help you find an apartment, and they can find you an apartment in a decent neighborhood. And with those licensed brokers, they don't get paid until you go out here and get the apartment. But they can help you out better than you going out on your own, because most of these buildings these days are managed by management companies, and because they are managed by management companies, there is oftentimes a lengthy process to vetting that, as related to things like background checks and reference checks, before you can even sign up to get an apartment. It's not like some parts of the country where you just go see a landlord or an owner, and you guys make a deal between yourselves. With management companies, usually they would rather have somebody who comes from a broker, because the brokers usually have done the vetting for them before they do their vetting process. So there's usually a lengthy application process where they go over your finances, they go over your job stability, and they also go over your references. So you need to make sure, before you even think about getting an apartment here, again, that you have, one, a very stable job, two, you have a lot of money in your bank account, and three, you have able references who can be vouched and verified for, people like employers, people like college professors or teachers you have worked with in school, and people who have a platform of stability. Because if you have those people on your side, you increase your chances of getting an apartment. And if your money is tight and right, then you also increase your chances of being selected for one of these apartments. So all of that, all your finances need to be in order, your job needs to be in order, and your references need to be in order before you start going out here to search for a full-time job. Not full-time, an apartment here in New York City, because what those people are going to ask for, the landlords and the brokers, is they're going to ask to make sure, can you afford to pay the rent in that apartment, and if you have enough financial security to take care of yourself in case of a downturn. Because when it comes down to New York's job market is extremely tough, and I know this from experience because I've been looking for jobs for years, and it's very hard to get full-time work here. So if you get a job here, you need to make sure you try to find a way to keep it, and you build the connections to retain it, because that's the only way you're going to be able to pay your rent. And when you get your, if you can get an apartment and you get through the vetting process, you have to make sure that you have enough money, because most apartment owners and management companies, they are going to want you to have a deposit and first and last month's rent. So that's going to be at least about $10,000 or $15,000 right there, because if this apartment is costing anywhere from $1,800 if for a studio in Harlem to maybe $2,000 or $3,000, you're going to need to have a significant amount of money to pay the first month's rent and security, first and last month's rent and security here in New York, because some people will want first month's rent, last month's rent, or they will want the first 2 months rent and 2 months security. It depends on who you're working with and what management company is running the property, but you have to make sure you have a significant amount of money in the bank to pay that deposit. And you also need to have money to be able to cover your rent in the case of a layoff. So you need to save up at least about 6 months' salary and expenses in addition to that, so that you can have that financial cushion that makes people feel comfortable about renting to you. And when you come to New York and you want to rent an apartment, you also need to make sure that you have stuff that proper mover to move you. So you need to have a mover and all that stuff. But if you want to try to save some money, you can just go and just get your apartment and then just get your internet connection, which is also some more money through Verizon Fios or Optimum. And you can do that, and then you just order all your furniture online and have it delivered. And that's also something you can do to save money. Now, before you even think about even going out here and renting an apartment, I really think what you should do is walk around the neighborhood after you've met with the broker. Just take a walk around the neighborhood and see what's there, because that's what my family member and we did when we were doing searches for a new place. We were out here going to the neighborhoods, walking around the neighborhoods, and seeing what's in the neighborhoods. Because if you don't go around and walk around the neighborhood and see what's there, then you won't get a good understanding of the neighborhood and the amenities of the neighborhood. Because being close to stores, being close to buses, being closest to transit is very important because you need to find a way to get to work, and a way that will get you to work quickly. Because if you pick a location for your apartment, like a neighborhood like Riverdale, it's a long time for those buses to come. That Bronx 9 takes a while to take you to the train station. And you also have to understand this is going to get into your commute time, and it's going to make your commute even longer. So yes, some neighborhoods like Riverdale are very nice, and then there are parts of Harlem that are very nice. But the trade-off is it's a long way. And if you live in Brooklyn, certain parts you're going to need a car to get to, because certain parts of Brooklyn are far away from a subway. And even if you take a bus, it's a 30 to 40 minutes added to your commute. So those are things you need to assess before you go out here and sign a dotted line on a lease, or even think about taking an apartment once it's offered to you. You have to think about where these apartments are, because if you go and pick the wrong place, you're looking at an hour and a half commute minimum, or a 2-hour commute maximum if you go out to areas like Queens, all the way out in Jamaica. If you go all the way out there, you're looking at about an hour and a half to 2-hour commute, depending on how far you live from the E or the F train or the J or the Z train. It's way out there, and a lot of cases, a lot of people there, they just have to take a car because it's just so far out there. And even if you live in Manhattan, it can be a major challenge as well, because you have to think about the commute times there as well, because certain areas, they have more people riding the buses and things. So those are all things you need to think about before you get an apartment. And you also have to think about how close you are to retail. Are you close to stores? Because in New York, yeah, it's 24 hours. A lot of stores are 24 hours, but some stores close at 10 o'clock. And if they close at 9, 10 o'clock, you have no place to eat. So you have to really think about that. And you have to think about, are you going to be close to supermarkets? Are you going to be close to places like barbershops? All of those things you have to assess, because all of those things are going to be a part of your life. So walk around the neighborhood, take a look at the community, take a look at the people in the community, because this is the place where you're going to be living for at least a year, because that's how long the minimum length for a lease. And if you sign a 2-year lease, you're going to be there for a while. So you really need to think about all of those things before you sign on the dotted line for an apartment here in New York City. And you really have to do your homework and do your research before you come to New York City. Now, if your money is good enough and it's really solid, you can avoid the whole apartment thing by going to buy yourself a co-op or a condo. Now, a co-op or a condo, it's a different real estate process, but at least you will own an asset that is a wealth-building asset. Now, when it comes to co-ops and condos, you have to not only pay your mortgage, you also have to pay a maintenance fee every month. But usually the maintenance fee is about the same as what it would cost to rent or at an apartment, or even less than to rent an apartment. And you get amenities with that, like them going out and making sure that the building is clean, making sure the building is safe. And in some buildings, you get access to things like cable TV and internet, depending on that building. And all of those amenities can be an asset to you and make your life a little bit more comfortable. But it depends on what type of building you want to live in. Again, in a condo, you would own the unit, but in a co-op, you would own a share of stock and get an apartment, and you would also have amenities as well. Now, when you do that, you also have to think about the solvency of the building and the finances of the building. So that's more research you need to do, but you would own something, and that would be a better long-term investment. If you're going to say you're going to live here for 5, 10, or 15 years, that would be a better investment for you long-term than renting, because when you rent, you're spending at least $2,000 to $3,000 a month. But if you get a condo, you can go out here and pay that in a maintenance fee. But if your money is good, you can pay cash for one of these units, and then that'll take care of everything. Because usually, if you have cash, you can get a co-op or a condo very quickly, especially studios and one-bedrooms, which tend to go very quickly. So that's something else you can think about for your long term if you're thinking about moving here. But the one thing I don't recommend is you getting a roommate, because here in New York, when it comes down to those roommate situations, you don't know what people are involved in, and you don't know what they're doing. And people, sometimes they bring people into apartments and you don't know what they're into. You really want to have your own place, because when you have your own place, then you have control over what's going on in your place and what people are doing in your place, because it is your place. So that's something you really want to think about before you come to New York. And again, before you come to New York, the thing you need to make sure that you have taken care of is your job and your money, because without your job and your money, you won't be able to pay the high rents here in New York. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. Or if you want to donate to PayPal, you can donate to PayPal by sending a PayPal donation to sjsdirectamerica@gmail.com. And if you want to support this channel, you can also buy my books on the SJS Direct imprint. You can pick up my books in the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, the Spinsterella trilogy, and my men's issues books like The Man Crisis on Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.